Good evening, everybody. I'm Cynthia Huling Hummel, and I wanted you to know I started having memory problems back in 2003. I was 49 years old. Wow. I was getting ready to defend my doctoral thesis, and I was raising a family, and I was pastoring a very busy Presbyterian church in upstate New York, and I was having problems remembering the names and faces of my parishioners. I couldn't remember the conversations that we had had, and I missed important events and meetings. And by midweek, I couldn't remember what I had preached on just days before. It all came to a head one day when I lost my way to the only cemetery in town. I had a family waiting for me. I was going to bury their loved one, whose name I could not remember. No one was at the church when I called to get directions to that cemetery, a cemetery I'd been to before. So I ended up calling the local florist, who thought it was a joke. I finally got to the cemetery. I was so embarrassed, but it was my embarrassment that pushed me to get more testing. And I scheduled my third round of neuropsychiatric tests. During those tests, the doctor asked me, since I was a pastor, since I had my doctorate, if I could name the books of the Bible. I got as far as Deuteronomy, and I couldn't go any farther. The tears were streaming down my face. I was defeated. It had taken me 8 years, but I finally had my diagnosis. I had amnestic mild cognitive impairment, most likely due to Alzheimer's dementia. My doctor advised me that it was time for me to leave full-time ministry because things were only going to get harder and worse. I asked my doctor about a timetable, and he said, 3 years, maybe more. I went for maybe more. I headed home to tell my family and my church, and just a couple weeks later, they had a farewell party for me, and it was like being at my own wake. I was trying to comfort my parishioners, but meanwhile, I was falling apart. It was just surreal. I packed my life into the back of a U-Haul, and I moved to a new town to start a new life. But you know how hard it is to make friends when you can't remember names and faces? I was incredibly, incredibly lonely. But eventually, I found my footing. I enrolled in an Elmira college right down the street. I volunteered. I decided I should get out in the community to stay socially engaged and cognitively active. And so I decided I would be a volunteer bartender at the Clemens Center because I figured, heck, despite my dementia, I could still pour wine or crack open a beer. But I missed being a pastor. And so I started substitute preaching in very tiny churches around the Finger Lakes. I'm talking under 20 people in a church. And so those folks would remind me, they'd raise their hand if I forgot to do something like, Pastor Cynthia, do you think we should take the offering today? Good idea. And so I volunteered for the Alzheimer's Association, and I led an early stage support group, and I helped plan social activities in my area. And then I was invited to serve on the local and then the national early stage advisory committee for the Alzheimer's Association. In 2017, I was appointed to serve on the National Council on Alzheimer's Research, Care, and Services, and I represent the 5.8 million Americans who are living with Alzheimer's or related dementia. Thank you. I am passionate about Alzheimer's research. I enrolled in ADNI, Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Study. It's a groundbreaking study. It's an observational study. I'm coming up on my 10th year in January. Yes. I don't mind the MRIs. I don't mind the PET scans. I even ask for the extra lumbar punctures that are optional. But I dread those cognitive tests. All right, starting now, how many words can you think of that start with F? I am grateful, so grateful to participate in this study. It's one way for me to fight this disease. Through my participation, I've actually been able to watch the progress of this disease. It's fascinating in kind of a sick sort of way. I've been watching on my phone, my cell phone, I can read the reports, so I've been reading about the shrinking of my brain volume and the shriveling of my hippocampi. I've been reading of the thinning of my entorhinal cortex and the increasing buildup of tau in my brain. I'm able to read those reports, and right now it says the results are consistent with Alzheimer's disease. Upon my death, my brain is going to the University of Rochester. I carry the card so that researchers can study my brain even more, so I can continue the fight even from beyond the grave. My mother died of Alzheimer's in 2014, and so did my mother's only brother, Austin. Their mother, my grandmother, has some sort of dementia. They used to call it senility or hardening of the arteries back then. Dementia runs in our family. I carry 2 copies of ApoE4. So yes, I worry about the people that I love getting Alzheimer's. I'm normally a patient person, but not with this diagnosis. Because you see, time is running out. Time is running out, and every day another memory evaporates from my poor, dementing brain. I don't want to forget my children's names or the names of my grandchildren, the way that my mother forgot mine. So every day I want you to know I pray. I pray for researchers around the globe, and every morning when I turn on my phone, I scan the news. I scan the news for overnight developments, and one thing that keeps coming up is that Alzheimer's disproportionately affects women, right? Researchers have their theories, but they don't really know why. And I want to know, why not? Why not? Why haven't we been able to figure this one out? When I was growing up, I heard time and time again that women have Alzheimer's more often because we live longer. I'm not a scientist, but I've got to believe that there's more to it than because we live longer, right? I believe we need to focus our resources and our research on understanding women's brain health. And that means providing funding and attracting researchers, ones that think outside the box, and recruiting more people, especially women, to participate in clinical trials if we're ever going to unravel the real reasons behind this disparity. In closing, I want to thank Maria Shriver. There you are. Thank you, and thank you to the Women's Alzheimer's Movement and to AARP for their leadership around this issue of women and Alzheimer's, and for convening this important meeting that's taking place during the AAIC. Alzheimer's is my ministry, and I will continue to use my diagnosis to support others who are living with dementia, to fight against the stigma, and to promote Alzheimer's research. Tonight, this podium is my pulpit, and I am calling on everybody in this room and everybody near and far to join together and to work together with the goal of accelerating Alzheimer's research with a special focus on women's brain health. It's time to move beyond the silos. It's time to move beyond market shares. It's time to pool our ideas and to share our findings, our data, and our resources. It's time to join our hands and our hearts, our brains, to fight Alzheimer's together. It's time. Thank you.